We have with us today yet another number one ranked podcaster in the country who happens to be yet another Catholic priest. I think I might need to take holy orders if I want to get my ratings up, because we rank pretty high up in the podcasts, but I haven't hit number one in years. So Father Mark-Mary Ames, Father Ames, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Michael, good to be with you.
So a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, Father Mike Schmitz, who was just on the show, launched Bible in a Year, or as I call it, Bible in 4 years. And Father Schmitz had this podcast. It jumps up to number one, and it kept hitting number one again. Then, the following year, he has Catechism in a Year. So he's reading through the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I think that one hit number one. It got pretty close to it, at least. And now, also, I believe, with Ascension Press, we have the Rosary in a Year, and that is starring you. So my first question, how did you take Father Mike's job, and did you have any advice on it?
Well, I think after doing one of these, I could see why Father Mike said, yeah, 2 daily, year-long podcasts is sufficient. So I don't think I had to fight him for it. But I think, I'm just grateful to God and the Dominican orders and Father Mike Schmitz for leading the way here. I
love the Dominicans, the hounds of God, for those of you non-Catholics who don't pay attention to Latin, Dominicanes. St. Thomas Aquinas, who is quoted on the show frequently, the great Dominican. I often recommend the Thomistic Institute, and I love the Catholic intellectual tradition, which we try to weave into the show. But maybe we don't talk enough about the regular, small, daily acts that can really help you grow in your faith. I love the Rosary. I pray it basically every day. Maybe if you miss a few times, but this is my most consistent prayer. I love it, and maybe I don't explain it well enough, because some people come to me and they say, "Oh, Michael, it seems repetitive. It seems boring. Didn't our Lord warn us against vain, repetitious prayers? There's so much praying to Mary. Isn't that idolatrous? Isn't she replacing God in the prayer?" All these objections to the Rosary. How do you answer them?
Yeah, I think first I'm going to listen to the person and see where they're coming from. I think, right, certainly we know that we are called to daily prayer, and we know that through tradition, and particularly the testimony of the saints, that there's a particular grace attached to the Rosary, and a particular, I would say, human genius. And, I know people will throw out the idea of, the gospel specifically prohibits against, repetitive prayers. And what's funny, actually, is that a number of our past Holy Fathers have also sort of admonished us against a prayer which is just mechanical or formulaic. So can you actually pray the Rosary in a way which is just mechanical and formulaic, throwing up empty words? Yeah, but also, to quote John Paul II, it can be this returning of love, like we receive and we return love again and again and again, which is really what we're supposed to be doing with the repetition involved with the Hail Marys. There's this receiving and returning of love. I know you're married with your wife. It's not, if you tell her you love her every day, she's not going to be, saying okay, you're just throwing up empty words. Each day you mean it, right? And that's what we're doing with the Rosary.
Right. And actually someday if I don't say it, maybe she'll say, hold on, wait, what changed? Why didn't he say that to me today? So what about the fact that in every decade of the Rosary, you're saying 10 prayers to Mary. You're only saying one to our Father, one glory be to the Trinity, and then one oh my Jesus. So why? Hold on, this is 10 to 1 for the Godhead. 10 to 3 at the moment.
Yeah, and there's a whole history, right? Actually, the precursor to the Rosary, we have it consisted strictly of the Our Fathers. This was the Pater Nosters was kind of what it was called, and now it became the Aves. And the short answer is, again, going to John Paul II and his apostolic letter on the Most Holy Rosary, is that when we're coming to Our Lady, it doesn't end with her, right? And so the love we bring to Our Lady, the gratitude we come to Our Lady, the ways in which we come to her, it doesn't just end with her. It returns to Jesus. Also to Jesus himself on the cross, when he said it to St. John, we understand him saying it to all of us, behold your mother, and that we all have this invitation to bring her into our homes. So I think it's a little bit of a impoverished understanding of prayer and of the Rosary and of the Hail Mary to reduce it to 10 prayers to Mary as if and somehow in that time we're not meditating on the gospel or not also and ultimately glorifying God.
So where does it come from? I think I know the answer to this, but I actually, even my own understanding, and I really love the Rosary and pray it a lot, but even my own understanding is a little bit blurry, where I know there were these prayer beads, and even the verb to bid, I think, like I bid you, sir. I think that comes from bead, tell your beads, say your prayers. But what's the history of it?
Yeah, the brief history of it is really, we go back to like the 300-400s, desert monks, the desert fathers. They're out there, and one of them, famously had this commitment to saying 300 prayers a day. And so he'd have like 300 rocks, and he, as he said one of his prayers, he'd throw the rock. And so this sort of like this counting of prayers with some sort of clarity began very, very early on, and eventually it makes sense that instead of finding and another 300 rocks every day, we start to just make prayer beads. And there's a reason prayer beads are popular in a lot of different faiths, right? So that's kind of the beginning of like the counting of the prayers, the prayer beads. And then it's going to go back to, for a long history of the church, a lot of people were illiterate. And so the monks would have been literate. They would have been praying, the 150 Psalms. And the lay people wanted to some way share in the piety of the prayer of the monks, but either they didn't have the finances to have the Psalter or they weren't literate. And so the practice began of inviting them to join them sort of similarly, parallelly, by praying these 150 Pater Nosters, which became the Aves. And so there's just like over time, there's this development of what becomes the Rosary. Certainly Our Lady has kind of gives the Rosary in a particular way to Saint Dominic, and so there's something new that happens with the Dominican orders. But that's kind of a brief introduction to it. And then over the years, it's continued to be refined with like Trent and kind of ongoing.
So you draw this connection between the Psalms and the Rosary, and the Rosary is sometimes called the Psalter of Mary. But you say, all right, well, the Rosary's got 50 beads on it, or 50 Hail Marys on it, Aves. Where did the 150 come in? And it's because there are three, traditionally, some of us still pray the traditional way, but then there was added a fourth set of mysteries. But there were three sets of mysteries, so it adds up to 150. And so it's in this way, it's mirroring the Psalter of Mary. But can you, in my experience of praying the Rosary, you've got the glorious mysteries, about the resurrection. You've got the joyful mysteries about like the incarnation, and you've got the sorrowful mysteries about the passion. And I find, I pray them. You're meditating on these various mysteries, and I find when I'm really praying, and I'm not being vain about it, and I'm not distracted or something, you could be praying the same thing for years, and somehow you see something new every time, something new about Calvary, something new about the visitation, something new about whichever the mystery is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the genius of the Rosary, the genius of the Rosary in the Year podcast, the genius of the gospel is that it's kind of ever new, and it's you can come to it and receive from it if it's like your first time, you're just learning to pray. But also we can receive the riches of the mysteries of our salvation every day without exhausting the wealth that we have there. And so certainly, it's we're coming to it different. We're coming to it anew. Like it's the living word that we're coming to as we're meditating upon, the scriptures. And so there I certainly have the experience, and I think everyone has the experience of coming again and again and again and receiving something from this time of prayer. Similarly, again, like as a married man, there's so much in your life that's continuing to evolve and to change. But when you're coming to your wife, it's the same wife you're coming to each day, but there's always a new something that you're bringing and a new way in which you can experience her.
Well, that's a great point, actually, because it is these things are recurring in time and space. And so, God is eternal, the heaven is, timeless, but I'm in time, and my prayers are in time, and things are changing. And I really like this comparison to your wife. So, did you expect this to hit number one? Before I let you go, did you, just from a brass tacks media standpoint, because this is Bible in a Year, I get a lot of people believe in the Bible, and then Catechism in a Year, I wondered, okay, well, this is, maybe some non-Catholics will be interested, but it's a little bit more, focused. And then Rosary in a Year. I mean, there's some people who I think really mostly just because they haven't experienced it are a little averse to the Rosary. Did you expect this thing to hit number one?
It's the slightly nuanced answer is, personally, I said yes to it. I had no idea that it would be what it has become. And so that was months ago. As time went on and I met with Ascension, certainly for them, they'd had the experience of having 2 podcasts hit number 1. So it was a goal. So I did know it was what we were shooting for, but still the whole concept is very hard for me to wrap my head around.
That's beautiful. And so people can get it on all podcast platforms, I take it. And
Exactly.
frankly, they don't even need a rosary to pray. I have a number of rosaries, but I forgot my rosaries today. And so I just you can use your fingers. It's okay. It's no big deal. And they've got you guiding them along so you don't even lose your place.
We got it all for you.
Wonderful. Well, I highly encourage everyone to go check out Rosary in a Year, generally just to pray the rosary. Father Mark-Mary Ames. Father Ames, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks again, Michael.
That was a good clip, huh? It's just me and you here. You could be honest about that. It was a good clip. I know. So what you could do